Everything that exists in life once began as something invisible, not outside, but deep within a fragile thought, a fleeting image, an unnamed emotion. No one witnesses the moment it is formed. Yet day by day, like a seed quietly sprouting, it grows, weaving itself into behavior, into choices, into crossroads that seem accidental but turn out to be uncannily precise. No result arrives without a cause, and no cause is stronger than a thought repeated again and again in the deepest soil of the mind. The mind is not merely a storehouse of memory or a processor of information. It is truly a piece of land, a fertile field where every seed of thought has the chance to take root. But just like a real field, it cannot discriminate between flowers and weeds. It does not reject a thought simply because it is negative or positive. It only knows to receive and then to begin its work, nurturing, warming, blossoming, spreading. Once a thought falls into that profound soil, it does not lie dormant. It begins to vibrate. That vibration spreads into a state. That state leads to action, and repeated action shapes destiny. If you have ever looked back on a period of your life and wondered why everything veered off from your intention, why finances grew difficult, relationships became distant, health suddenly declined, there is no need to search for causes in the outer world. The real cause may have sprouted long ago. Perhaps it was just a seed of fear, a moment of believing, I am not enough, a morning of hopelessness left to linger all day. And instead of pulling it out, we allowed it to root. Then it grew, as if naturally, and became the landscape we now call reality. No one teaches us how to be gardeners of our own mind. We grow up in a world where everyone speaks of results, but very few speak of seeds. Everyone looks at the success of others, but few look at the kind of thoughts that person planted years before. Everyone talks about their struggles, but forgets that they themselves allowed the seeds of doubt, anger, or judgment to quietly sprout each day. And when harvest season comes, we are bewildered and ask, why are there only weeds? The truth is, no seed disappears on its own. Every thought, every whispered phrase in the mind, every repeated emotion sends a command down into the depths of consciousness. Whether it is a positive or negative word, whether an image of hope or fear, the land of the mind does not judge. It only knows one thing: nurture this, make this real. The frightening thing is not the occasional grand mistake in thought. It is the small ones, repeated again and again, seemingly harmless, yet silently redrawing the blueprint of life. A person who constantly repeats within themselves, "This world is unfair," will begin to act as if that were absolute. A person who keeps believing, "I cannot do it," will unconsciously withdraw from every opportunity. The repeated phrases become patterns, patterns become beliefs, and beliefs are the maps the subconscious uses to guide the way. The good news is this: you are not the victim of that land. You are the gardener. Even if you have sown wrongly before, you always have the right to choose again. This land has no memory. It does not punish you for the past. It is only loyal to the present seed. Which means, if today you begin planting a new thought of healing, of the possibility of success, of your intrinsic worth, the land will accept it once more, quietly, without doubt, and begin its work of making it real. Do not wait for life to change before you think differently. Think differently first. Plant new thoughts, not because life is already good, but because you want it to be so. Whisper the things you want to see, not as magic, but as a new command given to the loyal soil awaiting its seed. Every morning is an opportunity. Every time you pause, still in the rush of life, is a chance to choose a different seed. You can choose to plant gratitude instead of complaint. Choose the image of fulfillment instead of fear. Choose whispers of love instead of self-criticism. And when you sow enough, continuously, without interruption, the land will respond. There will come a time when you no longer need to struggle to think positively, because the subconscious itself will begin to generate positive states as a new reflex. Just like a garden properly cared for, it will eventually bloom on its own. No need for control, no need for force, Only the faithfulness to the seeds you want to see become reality. Life is not something that comes from outside. It is the result of what you have sown within. If you want a different harvest, do not blame the soil. Begin with the seed. For the land of the mind does not choose for you, but it will nurture whatever you choose. And what you choose today is the clearest forecast of tomorrow's reality. Amid countless silent movements within the inner world, there is one relationship that has shaped the entirety of life's reality. The relationship between the gardener and the garden. One side is the one who chooses the seeds. The other side is the loyal soil, without judgment, without resistance. For every moment you are alive, the roles of both continue to operate, whether you recognize them or not. Consciousness is the gardener. It observes, compares, analyzes, chooses. It knows how to look at the world, how to say should or should not. But its power does not lie in knowing, it lies in choosing. You are the one who chooses which thought will be sown. You choose which image, which emotion, which story will be kept to repeat in your mind. And those choices, whether fleeting or deliberate, are all seeds. The subconscious is the garden, a soil that never runs dry, never rejects, never complains. It does not question whether the seed you give it is right or wrong, positive or negative, whether it will bring good or lead you to suffering. It simply executes, earnestly, devotedly, and entirely without judgment. If you feed it an anxious image, it will turn that image into a real state of anxiety. If you repeat a phrase like, "I am not good enough," it will accept that as an operating command. Conversely, if you evoke gratitude, an idea of abundance, an image of healing, the subconscious will transform those into emotional foundations, into chosen actions, into a vivid reality you experience. The state of the garden does not reflect the nature of the soil, but the choices of the gardener. If you see weeds, there is no need to blame the soil. Look at the seeds. Perhaps the gardener was careless. Perhaps, unconsciously, he let the wind carry in seeds of fear, doubt, resentment, or inferiority. And like any loyal soil, the subconscious began to nurture them with water, with light, with the nutrients of your very soul. Then one day, you look around your garden, the garden others call personality, circumstance, life, and wonder why it is filled with things you never wanted. The truth is, you did not deliberately choose them, but you allowed them in. And the subconscious does not need intention, it only needs a command. Therefore, the gardener must stay awake, must know what they are thinking, what they are keeping in the mind. There is no need to control every thought, but one must know what is allowed to stay and what must be released. Each time you let a negative image repeat, you are watering it. Each time you hold on to self-blame, you are fertilizing it. And each time you let anger or sadness occupy the entire inner space, you are helping it take deeper roots. In that garden, there is no neutrality. What you do not pull out will grow. What you nourish will spread. And what you repeat long enough will become the entire inner landscape. The issue does not lie in consciousness being too weak or the subconscious being too strong. The issue lies in the lack of understanding of each role. Consciousness is only the one who chooses direction, but the subconscious is the engine that moves the ship. If you give an order once without reinforcing it, the subconscious will revert to the old command. Not out of opposition, but because it cannot distinguish the new command unless you repeat it with enough emotion, enough imagery, enough belief. A gardener does not plant once and then abandon the crop. He returns every day, inspects, tends, removes what should not grow, and protects the fragile sprouts. Likewise, if you want to plant a new belief about self-worth, about healing, about deserving love, abundance, and freedom, you cannot think it once and expect it to take root. Water it with genuine emotion, with simple but clear repetition, with powerful images of the final outcome. Let the subconscious see that you truly want it, not as a casual wish, but as an irreversible decision. Not everyone understands this law, yet everyone lives within it. Those who do not know they are the gardener surrender themselves to the wind. They let the news sow fear into them. Let public opinions sow doubt into them. Let careless words from parents, teachers, or friends long ago continue to sprout each day like wild weeds. And they do not know why they always feel insecure, lost, meaningless. But once you understand, you cannot go back. Once you see clearly that you decide which seeds are sown, you can no longer make excuses. You become the ultimate one responsible for that garden. And at the same time, you hold the ultimate power to transform it, not overnight. But certainly, if you persist with what you want to bloom and stop nourishing what you no longer wish to see, the soil will respond. It always responds, not with words, but with feelings, with opportunities, with the people you attract, with the flow of life that shifts when the content within you shifts. No one can do this work for you, but no one can stop you either. If today you begin to think like an awakened gardener, if you choose like someone who knows what they are sowing, if you stop blaming the soil and instead focus on each seed you place, you will see clearly any garden, no matter how chaotic, can be renewed. As long as you begin again from the first step, choose again from the very first thought. For in the end, your garden is not your life. It is your inner state. And when the inner state changes, the whole life will shift accordingly. No need to rely on luck. No need to wait for miracles. Only the clear remembrance of the role. You are the gardener. And the garden will always remain loyal to what you choose to sow. You have once promised yourself to change. A clear plan, a strong determination, a firm commitment in your heart. Starting tomorrow, you will eat healthier. Starting this month, you will save seriously. Starting next week, you will finally finish the project that has been left unfinished for too long. Everything makes sense. The intention is pure. The reason is valid. You even feel excited when beginning. But then just a few days, even a few hours later, you find yourself doing the opposite. A piece of cake appears, and you temporarily forgive the diet. An annoying email arrives, and you open YouTube to relieve stress instead of writing the next part of the plan. The motivation was there, the reasoning was there, but you stumble right at the spot where you once swore never to return. And the worst part is that no one sabotaged you, except you. Self-sabotage does not begin with behavior. It begins on an invisible battlefield between two parts of the mind. On one side is the commander, willpower, reasoning, analysis. On the other is the old programmer, habits, emotions, ingrained beliefs. When the commander says move forward, the operating system beneath whispers, not safe. And so you take half a step forward, then retreat completely. You act as though pulled by two opposing forces, not because you are weak, but because you are divided. Consciousness is where goals and short-term plans are born, but the subconscious is what governs actual behavior. If consciousness says, I want to succeed, but the subconscious believes success makes others envious, or I am unworthy, then behavior will not follow the new command. Not because the subconscious is stubborn, but because it has been programmed with an old directive. A directive you do not know when you accepted, and it continues to run like a loyal machine without error. This is when the battle begins. On one side is the present you, full of determination. On the other is the old version of you, programmed from the past. The two do not speak the same language. Consciousness commands with logic. The subconscious responds with feelings. When you say, I must be more confident, but deep inside the feeling is anxiety, the subconscious only hears the anxiety. It does not hear the words. And like a recurring melody, it replays old behaviors, reinforcing the belief that I cannot change. Self-sabotage does not come from weakness. It comes from misalignment. You do not realize there are two streams of commands running simultaneously in your mind. One stream is what you want. One stream is what you believe. When the two conflict, behavior follows the stronger stream, and the stronger stream is always the one repeated more often, soaked with more emotion, tied to older memories. The subconscious has no intention of ruining your plan. It is simply loyal to the old script. And when the new plan is not strong enough, not repeated enough, not infused with deep enough emotion, the old script wins, quietly, but surely. That is why you can read hundreds of self-help books and still return to the same point. You know exactly what to do. You agree with every reasoning. But as soon as you fall into fatigue, loss of control, or stress, you revert to old behaviors. Not because you learned nothing, but because what you learned only stayed at the conscious level. The real operating system is still running the old program. And that program, though outdated, limiting, or harmful, is still considered safe by the system. Habits are not born from reason, they are born from repetition, and they are held tight by emotion. The fear of rejection makes you afraid to express opinions. The feeling of unworthiness makes you procrastinate action. Old wounds make you withdraw as soon as intimacy arises. Self-sabotage is not an action against you. It is a reflex created to protect you from what the subconscious believes is dangerous, whether it truly is or not. The clearer you understand this, the less angry you become at yourself. Because what you call lack of discipline or lack of willpower is not really a flaw. It is a defense strategy that once served you well, but now no longer fits. And instead of confrontation, you need dialogue. Instead of adding pressure, you need to change the way you give commands. The subconscious does not hear criticism. It does not respond to coercion, but it is extremely sensitive to images, emotions, and repetition. To change behavior, you cannot just change goals. You must change how you feel about yourself. You cannot force yourself to stop worrying, but you can guide the subconscious with images of a peaceful self. You cannot force yourself to stop fearing failure, but you can awaken the feeling of success in your mind before entering the challenge. When you plant an image strong enough, repeated with real emotion, the subconscious will gradually update the new command. And when belief changes, behavior naturally changes with it. Self-sabotage will stop when you no longer use logic to fight feelings, but begin to adjust feelings to align with logic. Then, you no longer need to try. Action will flow naturally. It will no longer be a battle in the head, but a harmony between what you know and what you believe. And from that very point, real change begins. Not because you forced it, but because you synchronized the two inner forces. And when the commander and the operating system aim at the same goal, nothing can stop you. Not the past, not old failures, not the times you once sabotaged yourself. Because once the mind is unified, you are no longer your own obstacle. You are the liberator. And that changes everything. Inside your mind, two forces always coexist, two armies. On one side is willpower sharp, alert, able to analyze, evaluate, create strategies, and make decisions. On the other side are habits silent, persistent, enduring, and never resting. They both live in the same system, but they rarely cooperate. And when there is no unity, what arises is conflict. The first army carries within it the beauty of awareness. This is the elite force. Willpower is where you make sound decisions, plan for the future, set goals, and commit to doing something better than yesterday. It is like a special task force, compact, intelligent, efficient in short bursts. It is what you use when writing a plan, when refusing a temptation, when starting a new habit. But it has one fatal weakness. It tires quickly. Each time you must choose, resist an old emotion, or control yourself. Willpower is consumed a little, and when it has been consumed enough, it retreats. Leaving the field to the other army, the second army is habit. This is not a small group. It is a massive system that has been trained for years. It does not need to think. It only needs to be triggered, and it runs. Everything you do repeatedly, from how you react when criticized, to the habit of grabbing your phone when stressed, to the way you talk to yourself each morning, are all products of this army. It has no tactical thinking, but it possesses a strength willpower can never match: automaticity. And because it is automatic, it does not tire. It can run for hours, days, even a lifetime, unless interrupted by a new command. And this is where inner conflict takes shape. When willpower makes a decision, Starting tomorrow, I will change. Habit does not oppose with words. It simply keeps doing what it is used to, not because it resists, but because no one told it to stop. And because it has been trained thousands of times, while willpower has only appeared a handful of times, its strength is greater. When you are tired, stressed, or simply distracted, you return to the old path, not because you are weak, but because the army of habit is too strong. The difference between these two armies also lies in their language. Willpower speaks through reasoning. It needs causes, explanations, whys. Habit does not need reasons. It only needs to be triggered. A circumstance, an emotion, a memory is enough to activate a whole chain of behaviors. When you are sad, it knows you will reach for food. When you are afraid, it knows you will avoid. When you face difficulty, it knows you will procrastinate. You think you are choosing, but in reality, you are being pulled by the old army down the path it has already cleared. More importantly, habit does not only live in behavior, it lives in emotions and beliefs. A deep belief like, I am not good enough, is not a fleeting thought. It is a program that has run so long you no longer distinguish whether it is belief or truth. And each time willpower tries to speak the opposite, tries to affirm you are worthy, that you can succeed, the army of habit quietly sends back feelings of insecurity, doubt, fear of being hurt. You do not see it, but you feel it. And those very feelings make you retreat, even though willpower still wants to advance. If you understand this, you will know that you cannot use the first army to defeat the second by force. Willpower cannot overpower habit by issuing a command once. You need another strategy, not confrontation, but retraining. Every habit was formed by repetition, and it can only be changed by the same method, repetition, but in a new direction. Not only repeating actions, but repeating emotions. Because habit does not remember logic, it remembers feelings. When you start a new habit, such as morning meditation, gratitude journaling, or visualizing your goals each night, the important thing is not what you do, but the emotion you do it with. If you force it, do it perfunctorily, it creates nothing. But if you attach to it a sense of peace, genuine feeling, real joy when imagining success, then you are creating a new stream of emotion. And if that stream is repeated often enough, it will gradually replace the old emotions, meaning the army of habit begins to be retrained. It is essential to understand that neither army is bad, both are you. Willpower helps you set direction, habit helps you sustain. The issue does not lie in the strength of either side, but in the lack of cooperation. If both march toward the same goal, you will find you no longer need to try to change. What once felt difficult will become natural. What once was resistance will turn into support. And that is when you are no longer divided within. This unity does not come overnight. It comes when you begin treating habit like an army that needs guidance, not an enemy that must be crushed. You need time, patience, and consistency. But the reward is true freedom, when you no longer have to fight yourself, but are uplifted by yourself. And from there, every path you choose becomes lighter, because both armies inside are moving in the same rhythm. No more war, only strength. And that unity can take you anywhere you want to go. There are days you begin with full determination. You wake up on time, drink a glass of water, take a deep breath, and whisper to yourself that today will be different. And truly, you start just like that. Everything feels under control. You resist procrastination, say no to social media, eat moderately, and focus on work. But then by afternoon, you begin to drift off course. An unnecessary email makes you stressed. A long conversation throws off your schedule. And when you return home, you no longer want to cook. You choose fast food, turn on the television, scroll on your phone past bedtime, and fall asleep with a sense of emptiness. The next morning, you ask yourself, why do I always fail to maintain habits? Am I not strong enough? The truth does not lie in strength, but in energy. Willpower does not fail because it is weak, but because it is consumed. It is not that you lack resolve, It is that you are exhausting a finite resource, the capacity to make conscious decisions throughout the day. Every choice, whether big or small, whether deciding what to eat or how to react, uses up a portion of willpower. And like a battery, when energy decreases, resistance against temptation weakens. Old habits wait for that very moment to return. They do not need to be strong, they only need you to be tired. Willpower is a form of mental energy. It is like a muscle. Used properly, it grows more resilient. But when overused in a short time, it becomes exhausted. And once exhausted, you lose the ability to resist old reflexes. At that point, habit takes over. It does not ask your opinion. It simply operates, because it is a program long installed. And if that program is procrastination, resignation, or avoidance, then you will return to the same old loop, no matter how determined you were in the morning. What is important to understand is this: it is not that you lack determination, it is that you are using determination in the wrong place, at the wrong time, or in too many ways at once. Many people begin the journey of change by setting a whole series of goals: waking up early, eating clean, exercising, meditating, deep working, learning new skills. They use willpower to force themselves to do everything in a single day. And for the first few days, it may seem effective. But then, the body and mind react. Exhaustion appears, and whatever is not built on positive emotion will soon collapse when inspiration fades. If you rely only on willpower, you are placing the burden on a temporary resource, and the temporary cannot stand against the permanent. Habits, whether positive or negative, are commands written deep into the structure of the mind. They do not need energy to operate, they only need to be triggered. Meanwhile, willpower needs effort. It needs motivation. It needs reasons. And it grows weary under repetition. That is why you can maintain discipline in the morning but easily give in at night. Because by the end of the day, willpower has almost entirely dissipated. That is also why you feel determined after hearing an inspiring speech, but only a few hours later fall back into old patterns. Inspiration comes from outside, but habits live inside. And what is inside always endures longer. This is not to make you give up willpower, but to help you use it properly. Think of willpower as the guide, not the carrier. Its task is not to do everything, but to signal, to point the way, to initiate new commands. But for those commands to become reality, you must transfer them into the automatic system of the subconscious. And this only happens when you repeat long enough, with enough emotion, and with enough consistency. Instead of trying to do everything with willpower each day, use willpower to create the environment. Design habits so that you do not need to make too many choices. Remove decision-draining triggers. If you want to eat healthily, do not keep junk food at home. If you want to exercise, prepare your clothes the night before. Every decision you do not have to make is a portion of willpower preserved. Use willpower as a strategist. Let it appear at the most important moments. When you rewrite beliefs, when you create new images, when you choose a different emotion to replace an old one. Those moments, if infused with strong emotion, will form a new blueprint for the subconscious. And once the subconscious has received the command, you no longer need willpower to repeat the behavior. It becomes natural, just like you do not have to try to brush your teeth each morning, because that is already a reflex. Willpower is not a perpetual engine, but it can be the switch that activates a more lasting system. That system is habit, belief, emotion repeated over and over. If you know how to allocate energy, prioritize what matters, preserve what keeps you steady, and remove what depletes you, you will not need determination every day, because your inner system has already changed. And at that point, you will see that what once felt like a fierce battle now becomes effortless. Not because life is less harsh, but because you no longer have to fight yourself every day. You have shifted from using willpower as a fragile sword to using it as a map. And when the map is clear enough, every path becomes easier to walk, not because you are stronger, but because you have stopped wasting strength on things that no longer need resisting. When you look back at your unwanted behaviors, procrastination, avoidance, fear, self-deprecation, sabotaging opportunities at the most crucial moment, the first thing that often arises is self-criticism. You blame yourself for lacking discipline. You think something is wrong with you. Then you try to fix yourself as if you were a broken system. But there is a truth few people tell you. Your subconscious is not wrong. It is not broken. It is not betraying you. It is simply carrying out an old command, an instruction issued long ago, often from a time when you were not even aware enough to understand what you were receiving. The subconscious is the deepest layer of the mind. It does not reason. It does not analyze. It does not argue. It does not create the rules of the game. It only enforces them. You feed it a command directly or indirectly, deliberately or passively, through emotion or repetition, and it accepts that command as truth. From there, it governs your entire system of emotions, reactions, habits, and even what you accidentally attract into your life. And the striking thing is this: once a command is installed, the subconscious does not ask whether it is still appropriate. It does not update with time. If you do not actively reprogram it, it will continue to fulfill its role, keeping you within the familiar zone it believes is safe. As a child, you absorbed everything with a fully open mind. Casual phrases from adults like, "Don't do that, you're not good enough," or "Money is hard to earn, you must suffer to have it," or "Boys must not cry." All of these became commands recorded by the subconscious as laws. Not because you rationally believed them, but because you lacked the ability to question them. And once they were written in, they ran silently, forming the foundation of your automatic reactions throughout adulthood. So, if you always find it difficult to keep money, it may not be because you lack financial discipline. It may be because your subconscious is operating under the command, "Money is scarce, dangerous, the cause of conflict." If you always retreat from opportunities, it may not be because you fear success, but because the old command is still running. Do not stand out. Those who stand out get hurt. And if you always find it hard to love, or always choose the wrong partner, it may not be because you lack love, but because the subconscious believes love equals loss, betrayal, nameless pain. The subconscious has no intention of making you suffer. It has no personal agenda. It has no logic of good or bad, should or should not. It is simply loyal to an absolute degree. Once a command has been issued, whether through images, emotions, or experiences, it treats that as the official directive for how you respond to the world. And the more loyal it is, the more it keeps you living inside a loop that seems impossible to escape. The important question is not, why does the subconscious act this way, but rather, who gave that command? And when you trace it back, you will find most commands did not come from you. They came from parents, from society, from a past event that left a deep imprint. The problem is, after receiving them, you never updated them. You kept living with an old operating system. While you have changed, circumstances have changed, but the subconscious still holds the original blueprint. No change can last if you do not change the root command. No new behavior can be sustained if the controlling command is still the old one. The subconscious will always pull you back to the starting point, not because it does not understand what you want, but because you have not taught it that what you want now is different from what you once feared. And it will not change on its own. You must guide it again. You must speak in the language it understands, vivid imagery, strong emotion, and intentional repetition. You cannot shout at the subconscious. You cannot reason with it through complex analysis, but you can show it a new image, a calm, abundant, confident you, loving yourself, walking through this world with inner peace. You can give it a new state to feel, the sense of security in receiving love, the feeling of worthiness when given opportunities, the relief of no longer straining to please anyone. And if you repeat this long enough, with genuine belief, the subconscious will understand. The old command has expired. There is no need to fight it, only to change the command. No need to force, only to give clear direction. A new command, repeated with enough emotion, will gradually replace the old one. And you will no longer have to try so hard to change your behavior because the inner operating system has begun to run the new program. Remember, the subconscious is not sabotaging you. It is simply loyal to the command that you or someone from the past once accidentally issued. When you understand this, you stop blaming yourself, and you begin a true journey, the journey of becoming the new commander, the one who knows exactly what they want, and is patient enough, loving enough to reprogram the entire system in alignment with the present, not with the obsessions of the past. You do not need to fight the subconscious. You only need to understand how to speak to it. And when you learn that language, you will see the subconscious has never been against you. It has always been waiting for commands, and it will always carry out what you feed it, with a devotion that borders on the miraculous. Each person carries within them a map, not a map drawn with ink or lines, but a map made of feelings, memories, beliefs, and fragments of experiences etched deeply. It is the inner map that guides how you respond to life. It tells you whom to trust, what to avoid, what to do when you feel unsafe. The issue does not lie in having a map. The issue is that the map was drawn long ago, with information that may no longer be true. And yet you still live, still choose, still decide based on those old lines. That map is not bad. It once saved you from harm, once helped you avoid situations that would break your heart. As a child, if you were scolded for expressing emotions, the map would draw a detour away from expression. If you were once hurt in a relationship, the map would build fences whenever someone came close. It was not created to harm you, it was created to protect you, in the simplest way the mind at that time could manage. But there is one thing the map does not know. You have grown, you have changed, and what was once danger back then may now be an opportunity for growth. Sadly, the map does not update itself. It cannot know that you are strong enough now to speak your emotions without fear of being hurt, that you are mature enough to step into a relationship without losing yourself, that you are wise enough to see that old pain is not destiny, but simply a marker to move beyond. You do not need to fight the map, because the map is not the enemy. It is only an outcome, a remnant from an old version of you. If you try to tear it up, burn it, deny it, you only create more inner conflict. For the more you fight it, the more it resists. The more you deny it, the more it quietly operates. The way forward is not to battle, but to negotiate. Negotiation here does not mean compromising with fear or continuing to live within limits. Negotiation means you look directly at the map, acknowledge why it was created, and then deliberately draw new paths. You do not blame yourself for once being afraid. You understand why that fear once made sense, and you gently say to your mind, "Thank you for protecting me all this time, but now I want to go further. And to do that, I need a different map." Imagine standing before a door. Each time you are about to open it, you feel your heart contract. The old map says, "Behind that door lies danger, failure, rejection." And because you have heard it so many times, you stop. You do not step through. But if in that moment you pause, look directly at the feeling, and say, "I know you are worried, but I am no longer the child I once was. I can handle what happens. I want to try." Then something strange happens. The fear softens. The map is not erased immediately, but it begins to waver. And with just one step forward, you have drawn a new path. This negotiation process requires repetition. The map does not change after one conversation, but each time you choose differently, each time you stay with the feeling instead of running, each time you respond with understanding instead of reflex, you are gradually redrawing the deep lines within. You do not need to know exactly how you will change. You only need enough courage to step out of familiar tracks, enough gentleness to not punish yourself for once being afraid, and enough patience to continue, even when the old map pulls you back many times. Like any system, the mind needs time to update. But if you are steady, consistent, and negotiate with sincerity, the subconscious will respond. When you no longer see the old map as weakness, you begin to understand that every limit you once lived with had a reason, and that reason deserves respect. Not to keep it forever, but to learn how to release it. When you stop fighting, you finally see the entire structure within you, and that very seeing is the first light to begin rewriting. Each time you act against the old map by expressing emotions, by holding boundaries, by accepting love, you are placing new markers. And when the markers are enough, the map begins to change color, no longer a maze, but an open map. A system that guides you toward freedom. Instead of merely steering you away from danger, you do not need to destroy everything to begin again. You only need to sit down, converse, listen, and then continue drawing. That is the art of transformation. And it is also the only way to live without being dragged back by what has passed. Negotiating with the old map is how you retrain yourself with understanding instead of force. It is when you know you deserve to live with a map drawn by the hand of the adult you have become, not the child who was once afraid. And once you begin negotiating this way, you are no longer the one running in a maze. You become the architect, the one rewriting the route of your own life, with freedom that comes from within. When one part of you wants to change while another quietly pulls you back, that is inner conflict. Not the battle between good and evil as we often imagine, but between the new you long for and the old you are used to. One side is the conscious mind aiming for progress. The other is the subconscious, striving to maintain safety. Neither side is wrong. They are simply speaking two different languages. And if you do not sit down to listen to both, you will remain in struggle, remain stagnant, remain stuck in the unmoving middle ground. Today's exercise does not ask you to try harder. It does not require you to strain yourself to become a new version. You only need to do one thing: dialogue, not with others, but with the very negative habits that have stayed with you for so long. Imagine you are the interviewer, and the old habit, the repeated behavior that has disappointed you, is the character sitting across from you. The first question is very simple. Why did you appear? For example, if you always procrastinate, instead of calling it a saboteur, ask it, what are you trying to protect me from? The answer may not come immediately, but if you honestly listen, feelings will guide the way. Perhaps procrastination is your way of avoiding the feeling of failure, because if you do nothing, you cannot fail. Perhaps it is your way of keeping a little freedom within a schedule you never truly chose. And the moment you realize that, you will see, procrastination did not come to destroy. It came to preserve a part of you that was still being neglected. If you often overeat, sit down and ask, what are you trying to fill? It may not be hunger, it may be emotional emptiness, it may be the longing for love unspoken. It may be the simplest way to comfort yourself when no one else did it for you. And when you see that, you will stop hating yourself. You will see that you were only trying to survive, in whatever way your subconscious still had left. If you often feel angry, ask, what are you protecting that I have never faced directly? Anger does not arise on its own. It is the outer shell of pain, of helplessness, of boundaries crossed too many times without knowing how to set them again. When you ask gently, the negative habit will answer with images, with memories, with feelings that never had a name. You do not need to know every reason clearly. You only need to ask and let the feelings lead. No resistance, no fixing, just listening as though you were hearing a child inside explain why it does what you do not understand. And once you understand, thank it. Thank it for being there when you did not yet have the awareness to choose differently. Then gently say to it, from now on, I will take care of this in a new way. The essence of this exercise is not rational analysis. It is learning to see the seemingly negative parts of yourself with eyes of compassion. You cannot drive out darkness by shouting at it. Only the light of understanding dissolves it. And understanding comes only when you are willing to pause, look inside, and ask, how are you trying to help me? After the interview, write down what you feel. It does not need to be perfect. It does not need to be coherent. It only needs to be truthful. You may be surprised by the answers. You may even cry. But those tears are the signal that the defensive shell has begun to crack. And from that, change no longer needs to be forced. It sprouts on its own. Once you have listened, the next step is negotiation. Ask the habit, if I want to change, what do you need to feel safe? That is when you make a new proposal. For example, I will not force myself to be perfect, but I will act step by step, or I will make time for my emotions instead of starving them. When the habit feels understood, it no longer struggles to survive. It transforms on its own. This exercise requires patience. Some parts of you have been silent for too long. They cannot speak immediately, but if you repeat this each time a negative habit arises, you are turning every moment of failure into an opportunity to explore your inner world. And it is there that true freedom begins. There is no need to force yourself to become perfect in a day. Begin with one honest question. Each time you ask, you step back from the realm of reflex and move into the realm of awareness. And from that realm of awareness, all change becomes easier because you are no longer moving against yourself, but walking with yourself, understanding yourself, and rebuilding yourself from the strongest foundation. Acceptance, a negative habit, when seen through the eyes of understanding, loses its power of control. It does not vanish immediately, but it fades, like mist in sunlight. And you, the one once lost in the maze of yourself, are now step by step becoming the guide, not through criticism, but through wisdom, not through force, but through kindness. And that is the most sustainable way to step out of the darkness and move toward the light that comes from within. Before you knew reasons, you already believed. Before you had the ability to filter, you had already absorbed. Before you were mature enough to question, you had opened your mind wide and let everything flow straight in. That was not your fault. It was the natural mechanism of the childhood brain. In the early years of life, you were not an analyst. You were a neural sponge absorbing the entire world around you without filters, without barriers, without any protective layer. And what you absorbed, whether right or wrong, intentional or accidental, became the core of the operating system you are living with today. From the very first moment you opened your eyes, the universe was a signal without words. The tone of voice, the expressions on faces, the emotional frequency of your caregivers, all of these were messages. If your parents were often tense, you learned the world was a dangerous place. If you were neglected in a moment when you needed comfort, you learned you were not important enough. If you were only loved when obedient, you learned to please in order to survive. These things were not taught in words. They were transmitted into the subconscious through states. And in that wordless world, you laid down the foundation for all the reactions, beliefs, and habits that would follow. Neuroscience calls the early years the golden window of brain programming. A child's brain waves operate largely at the theta frequency, a state equivalent to light hypnosis in adults. This means you lived in a kind of waking dream where anything repeated would be imprinted as a command. And that command did not need to be logical. It only needed to be repeated long enough. A casual phrase like, "You are so clumsy," repeated many times would become identity. A cold glance when you longed for recognition was enough to make you search endlessly for approval in others. You grew up not remembering every detail, but still living in the belief structures those details created. The problem is this: you did not only carry teachings, you also carried unresolved vibrations. Unaccepted feelings, unnamed pain, suppressed disappointment all became hidden programs running beneath every action. Sometimes you became capable because you always feared you were not enough. Sometimes you always cared for others because you had once been abandoned. Sometimes you smiled brightly because you learned that tears were not allowed. And no one knew this but you, not through logic, but through the quiet sensations that surfaced in every moment alone. When you understand that you were once a neural sponge, you stop blaming yourself for reacting in old ways. You no longer say, "I am terrible because I keep sabotaging myself," but begin to ask, which childhood belief is running me? You no longer try to force yourself past fear, but begin to decode why the fear is so great. You begin to see clearly. You are not wrong. You are simply living by a map drawn by the hand of a child, at a time when the only choice was to adapt in order to survive. The deepest change does not come from saying, "I want to be different," but from the moment you find the root of what holds you back. When you remember the first time you felt abandoned, when you realize you learned, "I am not important," only because you were once overlooked in a crowd. When you see the child inside still sitting there, waiting to be heard, to be trusted, to be loved unconditionally, that is the moment you begin to rewrite. You cannot erase memory, but you can heal vibration, and you do not need to return to the past to relive the pain, only to embrace what you once tried to deny. Each time you stand before a mirror and look into your eyes with gentleness, you send a new signal to the subconscious. Each time you sit in silence and breathe with your emotions, you teach the brain again, there is nothing left to run from. And each time you act from fullness instead of lack, you are reprogramming each neural strand in the pattern of wholeness. The subconscious does not distinguish time. To it, a past experience can still be the present if it has not been resolved. But for that very reason, a healing emotion today can spread through the system as if it had always been there. You do not need 10 years of therapy to begin again. Sometimes just one honest moment, one awakened decision, one symbolic embrace of the child within you is enough to open a new door. Subconscious programming from childhood may not have been in your control, but reprogramming from the present is entirely in your hands. And when you begin to realize, "I am not what I mistakenly learned, I am no longer limited by what I once believed was truth," the new journey begins. Not a journey of fleeing the past, but of reconciliation, awareness, and choosing again with a grown heart. You are no longer a sponge, you are the designer. And every design begins with awareness, understanding that the old program is a legacy, not a destiny. From there, you will write new commands built on kindness, trust, and the belief that you deserve to live a life governed not by fear, but by love. When a human being enters this world, it does not arrive with a manual. It does not know who it is, how it should live, how far it is allowed to dream, or what it should fear. Everything it receives at that time does not come through choice, but through absorption. And those closest family, teachers, the surrounding community are the first programmers. No computers are needed, no code, only glances, voices, behaviors, and the things repeated every single day. Each of them, whether intentionally or not, wrote the very first lines into the operating system of your mind. Family is where the program begins to form. Parents do not need to educate with intention, for children do not learn through theory, but through presence. If, in your home, money was always tied to stress, you learned that wealth was dangerous. If love was always mixed with control, you learned that attachment meant losing freedom. If mistakes were always punished, you learned to hide emotions and fear every error. On the other hand, if praise was scarce, if recognition was withheld, you learned you had to try twice as hard to be worthy. No one spoke these lessons aloud, but they were etched deeply nonetheless. Family does not need to be perfect, but anything repeated with strong emotion becomes foundation. A phrase like "stop daydreaming," said again and again, becomes a subconscious limit. A line like "our family is not meant for greatness" is enough to make you shrink back, even when the world opens its doors. And the truth is, those who planted those beliefs in you had themselves once been programmed in the same way. They were not wrong. They were only passing on what they had learned, with love expressed in the way they understood it. But you have the right to pause, to see clearly, and to choose again. When you entered school, the programming entered its formal stage, no longer hidden messages. Everything now came packaged as rules, grades, rankings, and standards. You learned that your worth was tied to external approval, that you were smart if you had the right answer, that you were good if you obeyed. And if you did not fit neatly into the mold, you were judged, criticized, even excluded. School did not only teach you to read and write, it taught you to believe that success had a formula and that you only had value if you followed that path. Not every teacher was an enforcer, But the environment, with its fast pace and equalized pressure, forced everyone to adapt. And so the creative child gradually learned to sit still and behave. The sensitive child learned to harden in order not to be bullied. The unique child learned to hide its essence to be praised as obedient. In that process, the roughest, brightest, truest parts were shaved away to fit. And by the time they grew up, they no longer remembered who they had once been. Then society entered as a layer of collective programming. Media, culture, religion, the unspoken rules of community all combined into an atmosphere you could not see but constantly breathed. If the society you lived in worshipped achievement, you would always feel lacking. If your community dismissed emotions, you would learn to deny what you felt. If your environment equated human worth with status, appearance, or power, you would be drawn into a game that always ended in emptiness. The most frightening thing is not wrong programming. It is programming too early, too deep, making you believe it is who you are. You do not question it, because it is the only truth you know. You think you are unworthy, but do not know why. You think you must please others, but cannot recall from where it began. You carry the original commands, running silently, quietly directing every choice, every reaction, every desire. But the truth is, you can rewrite the source code, not by fighting the past, but by seeing clearly what was imprinted. When you dare to ask, where did this belief come from? Whose voice does this sound like in my head? When was the first time I believed this? You are touching the very root of the old system, and only when you see it can you replace it. Rewriting does not need to be an inner revolution. It only needs to be small awakenings, repeated, each time you are about to react in the old way. One moment you choose silence to listen to yourself instead of rushing to please. One moment you dare to express an emotion without fear of judgment. One moment you stand firm in the belief that you do not need to be like anyone else to be worthy of love. Each such action is a new line of code, a signal to the operating system that it is time to upgrade. Family, school, society, they were the first programmers, but not the only ones. You are the next programmer, and this time you have choice, you have awareness. You have the right to rewrite with your own experiences, your own understanding, your own inner voice that you once ignored. You need not resent anyone, they only acted from what they knew. But you can be the stopping point of the cycle, the first in that flow of programming to say, enough. From here, I choose a new path. And when you do that, you not only change your own life, you open the possibility for generations after you not to struggle with repairing old programming. Because you had the courage to rewrite line by line, word by word with awareness, compassion, and light. There are days when you wake up and a voice is already echoing in your head, not loud enough to shout, not clear enough for you to argue with, but familiar enough for you to mistake it as yourself. It says you are not good enough, that you are too slow, that you always ruin things, that no one really needs you, and you nod, silently believe it, and live the whole day in the grey atmosphere that voice creates. But the truth is, that voice is not you. It is an old echo, an invisible recording that keeps replaying even though the one who recorded it left the room long ago. The mind has a special ability. It retains everything that was ever repeated with strong emotion. Criticisms, contemptuous glances, the times you were compared, dismissed, pushed aside, all left their marks. And because you were once a child without the capacity to argue, you accepted those words as part of the truth. You did not resist, you absorbed, then you repeated, then you lived by them. Just like learning a language not through classrooms, but through environment. You learned how to speak to yourself based on how others spoke about you. You did not choose to keep those words. They were automatically encoded into the subconscious by the force of circumstance. You were only 5 years old when someone carelessly snapped, "Why are you so stupid?" But the brain does not distinguish whether it was a momentary outburst or a lifelong judgment. It stored it, and later, whenever you made a mistake, that phrase resurfaced. You heard it echo in your head, thinking you were judging yourself, when in fact, you were only replaying someone else's voice. There is a subtle truth that few realize. Most of what you think of as your inner voice is not actually from within. It is the residue of the outside that has been internalized. It is your mother's voice when anxious. It is your teacher's voice when disappointed. It is society's voice when judging. They are not you. They are what you once heard too often, to the point you confused the echo for your essence. The old voice often has one trait. It is cold, rigid, lacking compassion. It does not care about context, does not measure progress, does not see how hard you tried. It only stares at flaws and magnifies them. It only repeats the negative and never mentions what you have done well. If you hear such a voice, pause, breathe, and ask, whose voice does this sound like? The very moment you ask the question, you create distance. You are no longer the one being controlled by that voice, but the observer. And when you observe, you can choose. Not to fight, but to untangle. Like opening an old music box and realizing the tune playing no longer fits your life. You do not need to destroy the box. You only need to change the song. Change begins with recognition. Every time you hear an inner voice of criticism, place your hand on your chest and whisper, I hear you, but you are not me. That sentence is simple, yet powerful. It reminds you that beneath every layer of echo, there is still another voice, gentle, wise, and unconditioned. It is the voice of your true self. But you must quiet the old noises to hear it. The habit of reacting to the old voice will not vanish overnight. But you do not need to win immediately. You only need to begin noticing. And each time you notice, you are no longer controlled. Each time, you step out of the old groove and onto new ground, where you no longer live in repetition, but in choice. Write down the negative phrases that most often repeat in your head. Then, beside each one, write, where did this voice come from? You will be surprised to realize most of them did not come from your heart, but from the mouths of others, people who themselves were repeating the voices they once received. When you see the origin, you no longer feel ashamed, you feel relieved, and that relief opens the way to compassion not only for yourself, but also for those who unintentionally pass down those echoes. Finally, begin to create a new voice, not with reason, but with real feeling. Each morning, before the old voice has a chance to speak, whisper to yourself, I am learning to speak to myself with love. Repeat this not to convince, but to replace, because the subconscious does not listen to reasoning, it listens to habit. And whichever habit is repeated with strong emotion becomes the new voice. You were not born with criticism in your head. You only accidentally absorbed it. And if you once learned it, you can absolutely unlearn it. With subtlety, with awareness, and with the belief that you are not the voice you once heard. You are the one who hears, and you have the right to choose again the song that plays within your life. There are beliefs that no longer serve you, yet they still quietly run every action. They are not written on paper, they are not re-examined with reason. They exist like a deep layer beneath consciousness, and each time you encounter a new situation, they quietly deliver the old response. They tell you that you are unworthy, not good enough, not allowed to dream big, or should not be too happy. And you, even as an adult, still act as if they were the truth, not because you are weak, but because you were never taught how to trace back and return beliefs that do not belong to you. The following exercise is a subtle journey to shed light on the things you once absorbed as self-evident but never questioned. Not to fight the past, but to restore your right to choose in the present. You cannot change what you have not seen. And this exercise is the lamp shining down into the basement where old beliefs hide. The first step is recognition. Take a blank sheet of paper, sit in a quiet place, and write down your answer to the question, what negative phrase do I often hear in my head? It might be, I will fail anyway. No one truly loves me. I am not as good as others. I must try hard to be accepted. Or, if I am not perfect, I will be abandoned. Do not rush to fix or argue. Simply write them down with complete honesty. Next, trace back. For each belief you wrote, ask, where did I learn this? When was the first time I heard this phrase? Who once said, did, or made me feel this way? Do not force yourself to recall every detail. Just let emotions lead. You may not remember the specific situation, but a face or a voice may surface in your mind. Trust your intuition. The deepest echoes often come with a clear feeling that needs no proof. After identifying the source, you will begin to see clearly. Most of what you believe about yourself does not come from truth, but from experiences that were never healed. They are reflections of others, people who themselves were living with unchecked beliefs. And the most important realization, that belief no longer belongs to you. Now it is time to perform the ritual of return. No need for complexity, no incense or religious rites are required. Only a quiet space, perhaps a small candle if you wish, and your full presence. Sit down, take a few deep breaths, close your eyes, and imagine that in front of you is the person who implanted that old belief in you. Whether they are alive or gone, whether you are still angry at them or have already forgiven. They do not need to be physically present. The image in your mind is enough. Look straight at them and say silently or aloud, this belief once belonged to you. Perhaps you too had it passed down to you. I have carried it for so many years, thinking it was part of me, but today I choose to return it. Not with resentment, but with freedom. I no longer need it to survive. I no longer believe it tells the truth about me. And from this moment forward, I leave this belief here with you, with the past. As for me, I move on with a new choice. You may place your hand on your chest as you speak, to mark the moment of transformation. You may write a symbolic letter and burn it after the ritual. You may cry, tremble, breathe heavily, or feel a space open in your chest. All are signals that your nervous system is releasing an old structure. Do not resist. Let the emotions pass through like water, washing away long-standing dust from your soul. After the ritual of return, write down a new belief, lighter, truer, closer to your essence. No need to embellish with false positivity. Just be truthful. For instance, I am learning to trust myself, little by little. I deserve love without conditions. I am enough to begin, or I have the right to try and fail without judging myself. Write this new belief in the best handwriting you can, and repeat it every day like a subtle code sent into the subconscious. Beliefs are not replaced with logic, they are replaced with persistence, emotion, and the conviction that you have the right to rewrite. Each time you choose to react differently, you reinforce the new belief. Each time you refuse to replay the old pattern, you rebuild your operating system. And each action rooted in self-respect, instead of shame, is an affirmation that you no longer live by the map of the past. This exercise does not require perfection. There is no right or wrong way to do it, only that you enter it with courage and honesty. Not to repair yourself, but to meet yourself again beneath all the layers of beliefs once borrowed, once received, once carried for too long. Because you are not what others once said about you. You are the only one who can choose what to keep and what to return. And when you do so, you step out of the old role, step onto the stage of life with a new script written by you, in the light of awareness, in the power of freedom. You can force yourself to sleep with willpower, but the harder you try, the wider your eyes open. You can repeat the affirmation, I am confident. But if in your imagination you still see yourself failing, your body will still tremble, your heart will still pound, and your voice will still falter every time you step onto a stage. There is a law that needs no approval yet governs the entire operation of the mind. Imagination is always stronger than willpower. No matter how hard you try, if the images in your head run opposite to what you desire, it is the repetition in the unconscious that wins. Most people fail not because they lack effort, but because they are using the wrong tool. Willpower is the tool of the conscious mind. It is useful when you need to overcome a short-term obstacle, make a quick decision, or maintain discipline for a limited time. But when it comes to deep changes in belief, identity, or repeated behavior, willpower grows weak before the power of imagination, because the subconscious does not listen to reasoning, it listens to images. It responds to emotions imagined. It operates on the program already installed, without caring how much you try. Imagine a man afraid of heights. He stands on the 20th floor of a building, and you say, "That's just a railing. There's nothing dangerous. You're safe." He nods, trying to appear calm, but in his mind, the images of himself slipping, falling. His body reacts immediately. Sweat pours, his heart races, his muscles tighten. He does not need to be pushed. The imagined image alone is strong enough for his body to believe it is real. And this is why you can suffer a heart attack from a nightmare or burst with joy from a beautiful dream, even though both only happened in your head. By the same principle, if you keep repeating a bad habit, even knowing its consequences, it is not because you lack willpower. It is because, in the subconscious, you still imagine that the act brings safety, comfort, or an escape from pressure. Each time you overeat, procrastinate, or cling to a toxic relationship, pause and ask, what image is being imagined in my mind? What am I unconsciously believing this action will save me from? And you will see, what you thought was weak willpower is really just imagination not yet transformed. The truth is, no one can change behavior in the long term without changing the inner image. And the wonder is this: you do not need to fight the habit. You only need to replace the imagination. Because when you change the image clear enough, vivid enough, frequent enough, your body, emotions, and reactions will naturally adjust. The subconscious does not distinguish between imagination and reality. It only acts on what is sent down with intensity and repetition. An athlete before competition always envisions each movement, each breath, each cheer of the crowd. A great creator does not begin with a plan, but with intuition and vivid imagery of what they want to build. Someone healing psychological wounds does not just say, "I'm fine now," but sits in silence to imagine themselves having overcome, being strong, being at peace so vividly that tears fall even before anything has happened in the outside world. That is imagination used correctly, and that is when the subconscious is reprogrammed. This law of reversal only feels paradoxical when you do not understand it, but once you grasp it, it becomes the key to liberation. From now on, instead of using willpower to force yourself to change, use imagination to invite the mind to cooperate. Spend a few minutes each day before sleep and upon waking to imagine what you desire as if it already exists. Not just saying, "I am happy," but seeing yourself walking with light in your eyes, chest open, a gentle smile on your lips. Not just saying, "I am confident," but envisioning yourself standing in a room, your voice warm, your gaze steady, and the audience listening in silence. The more vividly you imagine, the stronger the emotion, and emotion is the language of the subconscious. A faint image does not create change, but a vivid imagination can rewrite the entire inner map. You do not need to believe immediately. You only need to repeat. Because once imagination becomes habit, it reshapes feeling, and from there reshapes action. Do not force yourself to rely on willpower while still holding negative imagery inside. Do not say, "I am fine," while the image you keep is of a self that is failing, rejected, or worthless. Instead, begin at the root. Change the image, and everything else will gradually adjust. Just as when you change the blueprint, the new house will be built differently even before a single brick is laid. Imagination is not daydreaming. It is the deepest tool of reprogramming. If you do not consciously use it to move toward what you choose, it will continue replaying what others once installed in you. And then you will keep running, striving, fighting, but in a direction you do not even understand why you never arrive. Remember, you are not lacking willpower. You only need to change imagination. And when you imagine correctly with faith, with emotion, and with repetition, your body, your mind, and the world around you will begin to rearrange themselves to match that image. No need to struggle, only to direct. and then the law that once seemed reversed becomes the most powerful force you have ever known. The subconscious does not read text. It does not understand abstract concepts like success, self-worth, or peace if you speak only in words. What it understands is images. What it responds to is emotion. What it remembers is metaphors repeated many times. You can write hundreds of affirmations and read them every day, but if the images in your head are still of a lost self, an unloved person, a failure, the subconscious will still follow those images regardless of how hard you try with willpower. The language of the subconscious is subtler and more ancient than any language humans have created. It does not speak in linear logic. It operates like a stream of film, a sensation, a symbol, and you are the director of that film. When you say, "I want to succeed," the subconscious does not respond unless you accompany it with a vivid image of yourself living in that state, with a felt sense of steadiness and confidence, and with a symbol it can understand repeated over and over. The more you speak without envisioning, the more you sow an inner conflict. Look at how dreams work. They do not use language in the usual sense. They unfold in images, metaphorical situations, at times strange and illogical, yet they leave you waking with real feelings. That is when the subconscious is speaking. A nightmare of being chased can be the expression of pressure at work. A dream of a foggy road may reflect a vague feeling about the future. The subconscious always uses symbols because that is how it organizes the world. And if you want to change it, you must learn to speak in that very language. Images are the first words in the subconscious's dictionary. Nothing complicated is required. A child does not need to learn the word love to feel a mother's warm embrace. An adult does not need to say, "I am stressed," when a look at their own tired eyes in the mirror is enough. Therefore, when you want to steer the subconscious towards something, do not just speak. Paint a clear picture in your mind. If you want healing, imagine a safe place, an enveloping light, a stream that washes away old emotions. If you want to be stronger, imagine yourself standing upright, eyes keen, light radiating around you. The clearer the image, the stronger the feeling. And emotion is the signature that validates every message sent to the subconscious. Emotion is the bridge between the conscious and the subconscious. You can say, "I'm fine," but if your chest is still tight, the subconscious will read that tightness rather than the words. It does not hear your voice. It senses the frequency you emit. Therefore, when you envision something, attach it to real feeling. Do not just say, "I am confident." Recall the smallest moment when you did something right, whether it was speaking up in class or helping someone else. That feeling is the anchor point for rebuilding the entire inner map. Metaphor is the logical structure of the subconscious. Every belief you carry was installed by a story. For example, to be loved, I must try very hard. Only the best are accepted. If I am not perfect, I will be abandoned. Those stories do not come from logical data. They come from repeated experiences accompanied by strong emotion, and they exist as deep symbols in the psyche. If you want to change a belief, you must change the story that accompanies it. You must rewrite the metaphor. If you once carried the image of yourself as someone always abandoned, replace it with the image of someone opening the door to receive love, standing within a circle of safe people, gentle light all around. The body does not distinguish what is real from what is imagined. If you imagine yourself walking on sand, feeling the sunlight, hearing the waves, and smelling the sea breeze, your heart will slow, your shoulders will loosen. Likewise, if you imagine yourself about to be criticized, even when no one has said anything, the body will still go on the defensive. Therefore, the images you choose to repeat each day are the inner reality that will gradually take shape on the outside. The language of the subconscious does not need many words, but it does need repetition and sincerity. Each day, spend a few minutes sending a positive image, a healthy feeling, a new story. That is how you not only communicate with the subconscious, but also restructure your entire biological and psychological responses. Not by command, but by invitation. You do not need anything elaborate to practice this, only a quiet space. close your eyes. Envision a simple image: you smiling, light covering you, walking steadily. Then attach specific feelings: gratitude, lightness, freedom. Repeat daily, like watering a new seed. The subconscious does not respond to a one-time forcing, but it always responds to persistence imbued with feeling. And remember, you do not need to wait until you are perfect to begin communicating with the subconscious. You only need to begin with a small symbol: a door opening, a ray of sunlight filtering through leaves, a heart being mended. Gradually, the subconscious will understand. And when it understands, your whole life will change according to the very language it has heard since you were in the womb: images, emotions, and metaphors that listen. Reality does not begin with action. It begins with an image. No house has ever been built without a blueprint first. No life has ever changed without first sketching out a new inner pattern. And the blueprint of the life you are living now is not your small decisions, nor your external circumstances. It is the images that repeat in your mind, day after day, when no one is watching. What you imagine most, with the clearest emotions, is what the subconscious accepts as the map to govern every choice, reaction, and opportunity in your life. Imagination is a tool, but without discipline it will turn around and control you. Many people use imagination to picture what they fear. They build negative scenarios: failure, rejection, loss, shame, and then live inside them as if they had already happened. The body reacts, emotions fluctuate, beliefs weaken, and then they call it intuition or premonition, when in fact it is nothing more than an unconscious habit of imagination left untrained. As a result, instead of using imagination to create a new pattern, they use it to replay the old one in a worse version. Imagination does not need you to believe immediately. It only needs you to practice consistently. Like a muscle, the images in your mind grow stronger and sharper when trained regularly. Each time you envision what you desire with the right feeling, you are sending a new blueprint to the subconscious. Even if reality has not yet changed, your inner operating system begins to act differently. You react differently. You choose differently. You walk with a different posture, and then gradually, the world around you adjusts to fit that new structure. Disciplined imagination is not daydreaming in a haze. It is consciously painting a specific vision, not just saying, "I want to be happy," but seeing clearly what that happiness looks like. Where are you? Who is with you? What are you doing? What is the light like? What sounds do you hear? Each detail forms a sharper, clearer blueprint, and that is what the subconscious needs. If you remain vague, it will continue to follow the old blueprint, for at least the old one is clearer than the new one you have not yet defined. Set aside time each day, even just 5 minutes, to picture a positive image as if it were happening right now. It does not need to be complicated. A moment sitting under the sun, holding your favorite cup of tea, feeling at peace, a deep conversation with someone you love, a moment standing in front of the mirror, looking at yourself with understanding eyes, free of judgment. These simple images, if repeated often enough with the right feelings, can transform the way you live, love, work, and heal. Discipline in imagination does not lie in the length of time. It lies in clarity, consistency, and the feelings attached. You do not need to imagine for hours, but each time you envision, make sure you are sending a non-contradictory signal. You are not saying, "I am abundant," while picturing emptiness in your mind. You are not saying, "I am worthy," and then instantly recalling the moment you were rejected. Discipline means breaking the old chain of reflexes and replacing it with intentional images, repeated until they become your new nature. A person with disciplined imagination is someone who understands that they cannot control external circumstances immediately, but they can control the inner film reel. And when that reel changes, reactions change, attitudes change, and from there, actions change, and then reality must change. Not by some outer magic, but by a chain of silent yet steady shifts from within. If you have ever heard someone say, "I had imagined this long before it happened," that is not luck. That is proof that images in the mind, when clear enough, real enough, and persistent enough, will begin to attract, arrange, and open the paths to bring them into reality. But that process does not happen in chaos. It requires you to take charge of the content you envision each day. It requires discipline in imagination. You do not need a perfect life to begin imagining good things. You only need to begin from a small corner of the soul, one not yet wounded, not yet clouded by doubt. From there, you build a new image, a picture no longer distorted by the past, no longer pulled off course by fear, a new blueprint, small but clear, steady, and full of emotion. Remember, no one succeeds by action alone. They succeed because within them they had already lived with the new version of themselves first. They had imagined scenes others dismissed as fanciful, but they believed in them as though they were the only truth, and their subconscious heard. As for you, you can begin right now. By redrawing the blueprint of life from within with an imagination that is disciplined, intentional, and full of trust. It does not need to be perfect, only consistent. The rest, the subconscious will do for you. When a human being enters this world, they do not come with a manual. They do not know who they are, how to live, what they are allowed to dream of, or what they must fear. Everything they receive at that time is not by choice, but by absorption. And the one's closest family, teachers, the community become the first programmers. Not with computers, not with code, only with looks, voices, behaviors, and repeated words. Each of them, whether intentional or not, writes the first lines into the operating system of your mind. Prayer, in its truest sense, belongs to the same process. It is not a desperate cry to the sky, nor superstition reserved for moments of despair. It is the act of reprogramming the operating system inside you through deliberate repetition of images, emotions, and affirmations. When practiced correctly, prayer does not make you weaker. It returns you to the role of architect. And the subconscious is the archive where that design is stored, executed, and sustained. Every sentence repeated with focus seeps past the surface. It enters the depth where reason no longer debates, where there is only acceptance or rejection. And the subconscious never rejects anything delivered with consistent feeling and faith. It does not analyze right or wrong, it only records and repeats. This is why negative phrases from childhood carry such weight. They were not true, but they were repeated with emotion often enough to become functional truth in your inner system. Affirmations are scientific prayer. They do not rely on vague faith, but on a mechanism anyone can observe. Repetition builds programming. When you say, "I am abundant, I am loved, I deserve a fulfilled life," you are sending signals into the deepest layers of the nervous system where habits, reflexes, and unconscious reactions live. The effect, however, only comes when the phrase resonates enough for you to sense it could be true. It does not require immediate belief, only possibility. At first, affirmations may feel unnatural. That is normal, like inserting new lines of code into a program that has been running too long. The fresh commands feel out of place. But the subconscious is not concerned with awkwardness. It only cares if you repeat. Each repetition, in rhythm, in relaxation, gradually erases the old directives and replaces them with new instructions. The simpler, clearer, and more vividly linked with image and emotion the phrase is, the stronger the reprogramming becomes. The best times are before sleep or just after waking, when the boundary between conscious and subconscious is thin. In that pre-conscious state, affirmations slide in without resistance. Whisper them softly. Everything I need is already within me. I choose to love myself every day. I am the creator of peace and prosperity. No force is required, just breath. And let them flow inward like drops of water into roots. Think of affirmations as seeds. You do not dig up a seed each day to check if it sprouts. You sow, you water, you trust. Each repetition is watering. Each moment of ease is sunlight. And slowly, what you plant inside emerges outside as natural life. The danger lies in inner contradiction. Do not declare, I am wealthy, while still trembling over unpaid bills. Instead, choose phrases you can align with now. I am opening to receive. I am ready for positive change. I am allowing myself to move closer to abundance. They need not be powerful, only true. And truth plants deeper roots than strength laced with doubt. You do not need hundreds of affirmations. 2 or 3, short and aligned with your present state, are enough. Repeat in the morning, at night, and whenever silence appears, write them down. Place them where you see them, record them, and listen as you walk. The method matters less than your constancy. A seed does not care whose hand sowed it, only that it is not abandoned. Prayer is no longer distant when you realize every word to yourself is a prayer. Every repeated line, every phrase before a challenge is a petition to the subconscious. And that petition, repeated in the right way, does more than change feelings. It changes habits, choices, reactions, and finally, destiny. You can begin tonight, one phrase. Gentle, simple, true to your need. Repeat before sleep. No expectation, no pressure, only a whisper between you and yourself. And let the subconscious handle the rest. For once it accepts the command, it adjusts the entire inner system toward that direction quietly, steadily, with precision greater than any outer technique. Not every affirmation produces results. Some people repeat dozens of times a day yet feel no inner change. Others whisper just a few sentences each night and their lives begin to shift in a different direction. The difference does not lie in the number of repetitions, but in how you engage with each statement. For an affirmation to truly reach the depth of the subconscious and spark transformation within, there are 4 key principles that must be maintained. These are not tricks. They are principles of living ways you build a relationship with yourself through language. The first principle: keep it simple yet clear. The subconscious does not operate with long, complex sentences or lofty philosophy. It responds to clarity, consistency, and specificity. An effective affirmation should be short, easy to remember, easy to feel. For example, I am at peace, I am worthy, I am healing, life always supports me. Such statements are not only easy to repeat, but also easy to absorb into the body like a steady breath. If you need several seconds to recall the affirmation, or if it carries too many abstract layers, it will not reach the subconscious. Choose a sentence so simple that you could whisper it in the middle of the night without effort. The second principle: real emotion must accompany the words. An affirmation without feeling is like sowing seeds on dry stone. It cannot take root. Emotion does not need to be intense, only genuine. Even a gentle resonance between your words and the sensations in your body is enough to create a current that links conscious and subconscious. If you say, I am abundant, while anxiety fills your chest, pause. Replace it with a softer version, like, I am learning to feel abundance, or I allow myself to receive more. When the phrase feels true to your present state, a door opens. Emotion is the password into the inner programming. Without it, every sentence drifts away like wind across water. The third principle: repeat in a relaxed, lightly focused state. The moments before sleep, when the brain shifts into alpha and theta waves, are golden hours for affirmations to sink into the subconscious. At that time, the gate between conscious and unconscious softens, and every signal you send is more easily received. Sit quietly or lie down comfortably. Close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, and begin repeating the affirmation. No rush, no strain, just a gentle whisper to yourself. A tense mind will not take in the message, but a relaxed mind is like a still lake, ready to record each ripple. You do not need deep meditation or extreme concentration, only presence, calm, unhurried, without resistance. The fourth principle: avoid contradiction after affirming. This is the common mistake that cancels the power of affirmations. You say, I am healthy in the morning, but by noon you tell a friend, lately I feel weak, I'm probably getting sick. You say, I am abundant, then spend hours worrying about what you lack. Every action, word, and thought after the affirmation should reinforce the new belief you are planting. Otherwise, you are dismantling the structure you just began building. Let the affirmation become your inner standard. Before you speak, before you react, ask, does this align with the image I am planting? If not, remain silent or choose differently. This is not self-deception. It is loyalty to the new design you are rebuilding from the ground up. These 4 principles require no prior expertise. They only require honesty with yourself. Honest enough to choose an affirmation that fits. Honest enough to feel whether you truly resonate with it. Honest enough to repeat it daily as a ritual, not as a temporary tool. And honest enough to protect that vibration from old unconscious reactions that may try to break it at any time. If you follow them, you will notice something strange. Simple sentences begin to alter emotions. Emotions shift attitudes. Attitudes change behaviors. And behaviors lead you into choices, situations, and opportunities aligned with the affirmation. Not through forced effort, but through a subtle pull, like a magnet drawing scattered pieces into place. Words are not merely sounds. Words are energy with frequency. And when you emit the same frequency, with the same rhythm, at the same time each day, the subconscious begins to tune itself to resonate with that frequency. From there, your life shifts, not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily, clearly, and in the right direction. And if you still doubt, then test it. You need not believe immediately. Just choose one simple phrase. Repeat it each morning upon waking and each night before sleep. Take a deep breath. Feel the sentence as a stream flowing into your heart. No rush, no strain, only consistency. 1 week, 2 weeks, a month. Then you will see. You do not need to force yourself to change. You only need to plant the right seed. Everything else will grow on its own. There is a precious moment in each day that most of us forget. It is the moment right before you drift into sleep. When the body has relaxed, the conscious mind has stepped back, and the subconscious begins to take over the entire system. You are standing at the threshold between 2 worlds, the world of wakefulness and the world of inner programming. In that moment, every whisper you send inward is no longer blocked by doubt or analysis. They go straight to the root level and stay there. This is why the exercise of rewriting the life command with the lullaby technique carries such profound power. No effort is needed, only the right timing and the right words. Lullaby literally means a song of soothing, but in this exercise, you don't need to sing. You only need to whisper, gently repeat a phrase that carries a new directive for your life, and do it at the moment when the conscious mind has released its grip, so the subconscious can open itself to receive. Think of this technique as a nightly ritual, a lullaby that reprograms your destiny through persistence and tenderness. Begin by identifying the old command, silently driving your life. This is the invisible sentence, formed in childhood or through painful experiences that you unconsciously believed to be true. It may be, I am not worthy, everything is hard, I am always left behind, I cannot trust anyone, I must struggle to survive. These statements may not be spoken aloud, but they echo through your decisions, reactions, and daily choices. Write them down, clearly, without avoidance. Name them. Recognize them as the ones who have been steering your ship without your knowledge. Next, write the new command. Do not try to mechanically flip it, such as turning I am not worthy into I am worthy of everything. If the new affirmation feels fake, adjust it until it is true enough for your heart to open. For example, I am learning to love myself. I allow myself to receive good things. I am enough to begin again. Life is opening new doors for me. This statement is the lullaby, the new command, the map that replaces the old direction. Now comes the lullaby ritual. Before bed, turn off all strong lights. Do not take your phone into bed. Sit or lie in complete comfort. Place your hand over your heart or lower abdomen wherever you feel most deeply connected with yourself. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Exhale slowly and begin whispering your affirmation. gently, without force. Let it flow like a stream of cool water. You may repeat it 10 times, 20 times, or until you feel your body fully relaxing and consciousness dimming into sleep. If you want to increase absorption, combine it with imagery. When whispering, "I am opening to receive healing," imagine a warm light spreading from your heart throughout your body. When saying, "I deserve to live a peaceful life," imagine yourself walking down a gentle path, cool breeze brushing your skin, light illuminating each step. Do not try to picture it in sharp detail. Even a vague sense is enough, because the subconscious does not require precise imagery, but the authenticity of vibration that comes with it. The most important factor in this technique is consistency. One whispered phrase cannot replace a command that has been repeated thousands of times throughout your life. But a phrase whispered rightly and repeated nightly as a ritual will gradually reshape the internal compass within you, quietly, without pressure, just step by step, like waves softly lapping against the shore, washing away old stories to make room for the new. If you have tried to change but found yourself always pulled back to old patterns, try this exercise. You don't need to tell anyone, you don't need to post it online, only you and yourself, before sleep. One phrase, one gentle feeling, one slow breath, and tender persistence, like a mother lulling her child to rest. For you are that mother, and the subconscious is the child waiting to hear something new. Perhaps after the first 3 nights you will feel no difference. Do not doubt, you are planting commands into the deepest soil. Continue on the 4th night, the 5th, the 7th. By the 10th night, you may notice a lightness within. You wake without the heavy weight of old mornings. A small decision in the day feels easier. An old belief no longer feels so powerful. These are signs that your sleep is carrying the new command through all layers of your nervous system, rebuilding your structure from within. Choose to rewrite your destiny with whispers, not with noisy battles, for it is not shouting that brings change. It is the gentle lullabies, repeated at the right moment, in the right place, in the right way. That is the art of deep programming, and you are learning to do it, beginning tonight, beginning within yourself. There is one thing that most pains have in common. They do not happen in the present. They are echoes of a moment long gone, yet they haunt you as if still unfolding. Whether it was an insult, a betrayal, or a disappointment too subtle to name all of them, leave imprints in the stream of memory, silently reshaping how you see yourself. But what truly matters is not the past itself, but the way you carry it like a heavy shadow, assuming it is an inseparable part of who you are. Healing does not come from forgetting, but from deliberately returning, facing it, and rewriting the old story with a new perspective. Forgiveness is not about pardoning others. First and foremost, it is the act of freeing yourself from trapped energy. When you hold on to a wounding memory without release, you are letting that memory govern much of your current emotional state. You are not living from where you stand, but from where you once fell. Forgiveness is unclasping the iron hook that keeps you chained to the past, not because the one who hurt you deserves it, but because you deserve freedom. To truly forgive, you must do something very brave. Revisit that memory with a new frame of meaning, not denying, not rejecting, but no longer allowing it to be the center. Imagine a child lost in the forest. It cried, panicked, and believed it would never survive. But 10 years later, looking back as it has grown, that child may see the forest is no longer as terrifying. It may see that, thanks to that lost moment, it learned to observe, to listen, to survive. You can do the same with your memory, not change the event, but change the role you assign it in the story of your life. There are guilts that cannot be named, yet they seep into every choice. Feelings of, "I am wrong," "I am not enough," "It's all my fault." These silent commands run so deep you think they are your true voice. But they are not you. They are aftershocks, echoes. And it is time to set them down. Not by forcing yourself to be positive, but by touching them with the light of understanding. Try a small exercise. Close your eyes and call forth the image of yourself at that moment of hurt. Do not judge, just look. Imagine that person sitting before you, with tired eyes, perhaps a child, a teenager, or a recent version of yourself. And now, instead of avoidance or anger, say to them, I am here. I understand now, and I no longer blame you. Sometimes, just such a simple sentence, repeated a few nights in a row, is enough for the old crack to begin mending. Redefining the past does not mean pretending it never happened. It means mastering the way you retell it. A scar remains a mark, but it can become a medal if you choose to see it that way. There are people who endured deep wounds, yet instead of letting them destroy, they use those very experiences to heal others. You do not need to become a therapist, but you can absolutely become the one who redefines yourself. And then, guilt will have no foothold left. Guilt is the deepest form of rejecting self-love. It keeps you in feelings of unworthiness, insufficiency, insecurity. But guilt is not truly part of you. It is dust that has settled on the mirror after years of neglect. When you forgive, you begin to wipe that dust away. When you redefine, you begin to see your true face. And when you release guilt, you return to your natural essence. Someone learning to love, to live, and to be gentle with themselves. If each night before sleep you can whisper to yourself, I release the past. I allow myself to be light. Over time, that will become a new signal sent into your subconscious. You do not need to forget the past, but you can stop living in it. You do not need to erase memory, but you can dismantle the emotional fences around that memory. Healing does not come in a single day, but it always begins with a single moment, the moment you decide no longer to let the past drive your life. And when you do, you will be surprised to see, on the other side of pain is not an abyss. It is a door, and you hold the key, right now, in your hand. Each day, you pass through an invisible gate twice, once when you wake, once when you fall asleep. And the strange truth is, most of what determines how you feel, react, and behave throughout the day is not programmed in the daylight, but precisely at those times when you stand at the threshold between waking and dreaming. That is when consciousness steps back, the subconscious opens up, and even the smallest whisper can leave a profound imprint. At night, in that moment of transition, it is not merely a time for sleep. It is a powerful programming gate where you can sew the blueprint of your life all over again. The subconscious does not distinguish between right or wrong, does not argue, does not analyze logic. It only receives, repeats, and replicates. During the day, when the conscious mind is active, it acts as a filter, a gatekeeper. But at night, when you begin to drift into drowsiness, that gate opens. Whatever you feed in at that moment slides straight into the command center of your inner operating system. And then, without you remembering or intending, it runs quietly, repeating, creating the patterns of emotion, choice, and action for the next day. That is why people who often fall asleep in states of tension, worry, or after consuming negative news usually experience nightmares, restless sleep, and wake up tired even if they have slept long enough. In contrast, if you know how to use that moment to plant a new signal, a simple affirmation, a positive image, a feeling of love, you will not only have a more restful sleep, but you will also begin rewriting the source code of your life. You do not need hours of meditation, nor dozens of self-help books. If each night you can spare just 3 minutes before sleep to do one single thing, choose the message you want to carry into your subconscious. Imagine the subconscious as a vast field. Each night, you walk out into it with one seed in your hand. What will you plant? A reproach? A fear? Or a new belief that you are guided, that you are abundant, that you are loved? Try this. Before turning off the light, place your hand on your heart, take a slow breath, and whisper, "Everything is being arranged to serve my peace and growth." That sentence does not need to match your current logic. It only needs to align with the direction you want to go. Repeated nightly, like a signal sent to the center, gradually you will notice subtle changes in how you wake, in the decisions you make, in the energy you radiate without effort. The state before sleep is called the alpha state, when brain waves shift from alert rhythms to slower ones. when intuition is stronger, inner resistance weaker, and perception more refined. It is the purest window to change yourself, not through physical effort, but through transmission by emotion and imagery. If you can envision something good, immerse in that feeling for just 2 or 3 minutes before sleep, you are sending a new command for tomorrow and for many days after. Night is not an ending. It is an opening for you to redefine yourself. When all devices are turned off, when noise has subsided, you face your real background screen, the subconscious. And if you do not deliberately choose something to put in, it will automatically replay the old recordings. Do not let that happen, because you are not the old recording, you are the one writing the new score. A simple yet effective technique is to write your affirmation or goal on paper and place it on your bedside. Before sleep, read it silently, take a breath, and let the image of it dissolve into the stream of awareness. Do not analyze, do not ask, when will it happen? Just send it off like a quiet prayer into your inner space. If you once had the habit of watching news, scrolling your phone, or wandering in thought before bed, replace it with a new ritual. Listen to soft music, read an affirmation, imagine a scene you wish to live in. You are not pretending. You are retraining the use of humanity's strongest tool, the ability to plant seeds through image and feeling. And you are doing it at the moment when the soil of the mind is softest at night. Do not underestimate the night gate. It is not just the door into dreams, it is the door into yourself. And if each night you walk through it carrying a seed of trust, gentleness, and clear direction, then without much effort, life will begin to rearrange itself in the direction you desire. There are things you cannot change during the day because the resistance is too great, because the habits run too deep. But at night, when all resistances fall asleep, when only you and your inner sky remain, that is when you can softly speak something new and let the inner universe begin to listen, and then gradually, through each dream, each new day, each small decision, you will find you are no longer the old version. You are someone being reprogrammed gently, steadily, and at the most perfect time. Right before you drift into sleep, everyone lives with a film playing inside their head. Some replay the same tragic ending every day, as if it were the only possible outcome. Some fast forward and rewind moments of failure, pain, and loss, and call it preparing for the worst. But no one pauses to ask, who is writing the script for that film? And why are you allowing those images to keep screening right in the theater of your mind every single day and night? Fear is not the enemy. It is the old director, a figure that once had a purpose when you were small, when you needed defenses to survive, when you did not yet understand the world. But if you still let that director stand behind the camera, then even though you are grown, you continue to live inside repeated scenes that you will fail, be rejected, be abandoned, be not enough. Fear only knows one job, to keep you in the safe zone. But that safe zone is not where you truly live. It is only where you hide. Every fear begins with an image. You have not yet been hurt, but you see the image of being hurt in your mind, and your body reacts as if it were happening. Heart racing, cold hands, thoughts in chaos. Nothing outside has changed. Just one reel of film inside your head is enough to turn your inner life upside down. So if images are that powerful, why not use them to create the opposite? Imagine a dark room where you have projected the same reel of failure for many years. Now turn on the light in that room. Pick up the old film reel. Look at it as a screenwriter, no longer a victim, no longer an actor being controlled. You are holding the pen, and you have the right to rewrite. Choose a scene you often imagine when fear arises, the scene of being rejected in a job, being mocked, failing before a crowd. Do not avoid it. Recreate it in your mind, but this time, change the ending. Instead of bowing your head and leaving, imagine yourself standing tall. Instead of silence, picture yourself smiling and responding with calm. Instead of the crowd laughing, see them listening and applauding. And most importantly, feel it as real, not as a hollow fantasy. The subconscious does not distinguish between imagination and reality. It only distinguishes through emotion. If you tremble in a dream, your body sweats as if truly in danger. So if you can feel strength, confidence, and triumph in imagination, the subconscious will record it as real data. And once that data repeats often enough, your emotional response will change, and then your behavior, and then your results. Conquering fear is not about erasing it. It is about no longer being led by it. Fear may still appear, but it no longer paralyzes you. You see it, smile, and move forward. That only happens when you rewrite the film in your head, not once, but repeatedly, like a ritual, until the new story becomes the default. A simple technique is opposite visualization. When you notice yourself starting to think of a negative scenario, stop and write out the reverse. What is the most beautiful outcome that could happen? If you are rejected, what did you learn? If you fail, where did you grow stronger? If you dared to act, trembling yet brave, how much more courageous were you than those who only waited? Each time you repeat the positive script, you are recoloring the old film, gradually adapting it into a new one full of light, movement, and possibility. If every day you could take just 5 minutes to close your eyes, breathe deeply, and re-watch yourself in a life scene that once made you tremble, but this time you act with confidence, love, and presence, then bit by bit you are altering the operating system inside, and you will realize fear is no longer a dark giant. It is only an old actor waiting for you to rewrite the role. You were not born to repeat old reels. You were born to create new works. Each time you choose to imagine the positive, each time you place your hand on your heart and picture yourself moving through fear like a breeze, you are stepping toward another version of yourself, a self not led by fear, but guided by trust. And if one day you find yourself facing a situation where your heart races, your palms turn cold, your breath short pause, remember that film is not destiny. It is only a draft. And you, standing there, can cut, edit, add light, add a new ending. That film cannot play without your permission. Conquering fear is victory in silence. No weapons needed, no proclamations, just one small act each day, rewriting the film inside your head. And from there, you will step onto the stage of life no longer as a supporting actor, but as the very writer of your own script. Every ship needs a captain, and every ocean demands loyal sailors. Within you, the conscious mind is the one giving orders, the captain standing on deck, charting the course, observing direction. The subconscious is the silent crew below, carrying out every command without debate, without questioning, without judgment. Yet in most of life, the captain speaks one way, while the crew clings to old, conflicting orders, and so the ship circles in contradiction. It never reaches its destination, not because the ocean is too fierce, but because there is no unity within. You may want happiness, health, peace, but if deep in the subconscious, the sailors still follow the orders that say, I am unworthy, everything is difficult, I will fail again, then no matter how loudly the conscious mind shouts, the ship will not change course. The crew does not listen to words. They follow old commands, commands repeated many times, stamped with powerful emotion, handed down from the earliest years when you did not yet know how to question. The turning point begins when the captain stops blaming the crew and starts to converse. Not commanding, not imposing, but negotiating. Asking why they act this way, asking where the old orders came from, and gently, little by little, offering them new commands, simple, clear, consistent, so they have time to adjust, to trust, and to begin carrying them out. At that point, you are no longer two opposing forces in one body. You are one unified, smooth, moving in the same direction. A unified mind is when the conscious no longer needs to strain to give orders, because the subconscious has been reprogrammed to trust and cooperate. It is like learning to drive a car at first. You must remember every move, every reflex. But once familiar, you no longer think. The subconscious executes every action precisely. That is when you achieve true freedom. Freedom is not controlling everything by willpower, but creating an inner system that runs in harmony without effort. This unity does not come from a sudden push. It comes from persistence, from every affirmation you whisper before sleep, from each time you sit in silence, close your eyes, and imagine yourself as the new version, from every small decision you make with awareness, speaking kindly to yourself, forgiving old mistakes, choosing positive images instead of fear, and being consistent in the way you speak, think, feel, and act. Each of these moments is another step toward integration. Unity is not the absence of mistakes. It is when even mistakes become opportunities to adjust orders. When you fall, instead of judging, you observe. What did the subconscious do? Which old command was just triggered? And then, with compassion, you rewrite it, not with whips, but with steady love, like a patient teacher guiding their student. One sign you are approaching unity is this: you feel lighter when making decisions. You no longer struggle internally every time you want to change. You no longer need to tell yourself 100 times to get up in the morning. Positive actions begin to become instinct. Peace comes not because everything outside is calm, but because inside there is no more conflict. You are not walking forward while dragging a resisting side. You walk, and the whole of you walks with you. You are not a battlefield between reason and emotion. You are a symphony where reason chooses the music and emotion is the instrument that plays. When the two are aligned, the sound of life becomes clear, strong, and vibrant. And you will see, nothing outside needs to change right away. With inner unity, every wave outside can be steered. And if there is a time to begin this process of unification, it is now. Not tomorrow, not when perfect. Just one new command, one clear image of where you want to go, and a small daily consistency to repeat it, live it, feel it. Then one morning you will wake and realize you are no longer dragging your ship forward. It is gliding on course, light and strong, because the captain and the crew have finally become one. Unity is the door, but you are the one holding the key, and you do not need to go anywhere far. Just be still, listen, and begin to send new orders, clear, loving, consistent. The rest, the subconscious will handle. It has always been loyal, and now it is ready to serve you a new captain, wise and whole.